So for this demo, what we're going to try to do, just getting my tablet realigned here. What we're going to try to do is add eyes to this little creature here. So right now it's got eyes, but the problem with them right now is that they're just blank. And it would be nice to be able to add some eyelids at least so that we can get a little bit of a blink. So as he's talking to the frog, we get that blink, blink, blink kind of thing. It would also be nice if we could add a pupil potentially, just so we can have something to look at. And then we also want to be able to have it follow the rig in a non-destructive way. So what I mean by that is right now, if I move the rig, the eye kind of morphs and breaks. And that's because it's being attached to the head using a wrap deformer. And that's going to cause the eye to distort if anything kind of stretches or morphs. So even if I do this, you're going to notice a little bit of change. Like right here, you can see it right there. It's impacting the eye right here. And it goes back to a round shape right here. So we want to be able to create a little bit of an eye, but not have it break as we go along. So how can we do this? Now, this is also something that you can do whenever you want to add essentially googly eyes to anything, which can be kind of fun. Like let's say your character has a water bottle that they're talking to for some reason, and you just want to do a cartoony shot and then suddenly eyes appear and it's blinking at the character, whatever reason. Honestly, it's not super critical, but there might be a time when you want to do that. Usually I will do this in shots where I want to take a rig that might not have expressions and just kind of give it a little bit more life. Now, the thing I'm going to do here is going to be very simple. It's just going to be the most basic of eyes. Maybe later we can go over like how to do a more polished rig. This is going to be pretty simple. So let's go through the steps here. Now, to do this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create the eye separate from the character and then put into place afterwards. This just makes it a little easier to set up and to rig versus trying to do it on your character that's already in a pose. So from here, I'm just going to go back to the center of the world here, and then I'm going to create a sphere. It's a good place to start for an eyeball, a sphere. Okay. So let's call this here eyeball. Geo. Okay, cool. Now, I want that eyeball to be facing in this direction here. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Now, why did I rotate it when it's a sphere? Well, the big thing whenever I'm creating eyes is if you look at a sphere, you're going to have poles at the end of each sphere when they're made in the default manner. So right here, you can see how all the lines converge on the ends right there. You usually want to have that be where the eyeball is pointing. If you have the eye standing straight up and then you put the eye pupil right there, it's just going to make it harder in most cases. By using this, it just makes it a lot easier and tends to align things pretty well. So I'm going to have this right here. There we go. That's pretty good. Nice and easy. Now from there, I'm going to duplicate this, scale this up, and let's see. Let's just create the eyelids first. So this is going to be eyelid top right there. And for the eyelid, I'm actually going to zero out the rotations back. So we're just like this again. And what I want to do for the eyelid top is essentially just have it be half of the sphere. Because I'm going to have the top lid and bottom lid, and they're just going to be two pieces of geometry that kind of close in on each other. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to select my vertices, take the bottom half right here, and then I'm going to make sure that my manipulator here is set to world mode right there. And then under tool settings, make sure that my move snap options, I turn off retain component spacing. If I don't do that, what's going to happen is I want to flatten this. So essentially just flatten it like that. And I also want to line them up to the bottom vertices right here. So I can do this by selecting all these vertices, selecting my translate Y, holding down the V key, V as in Victor, and then middle mouse dragging. Boop, right there. And you'll notice that, well, that didn't do anything. It just moved it up. That's because retain component spacing is turned on. Essentially what that means is that Maya is going to look at all of these objects and think of them as one whole. So when I'm snapping this up, it's taking the entire selection and just going up. Take this entire thing as one unit. If I turn off retain component spacing, what's going to happen is now Maya is going to think of every single vertex as an individual and snap all of them individually. So now if I do this, hold down V, snap, boop, it snapped all of them to that point, and I get this nice flat surface right there. So like that. Then I'm going to duplicate this, rotate this 180 degrees, and then just call this bottom. Top, bottom. There we go. So there's our eyelids. And if I actually just take this and make sure I don't select through, do that, you can see there's our eyelids right there. Now, one thing I do like to do is I'd like to make the top eyelid a little bit bigger, bottom eyelid a little bit smaller, just so we have a little bit of a shape change there. Additionally, I like to make sure that the top eyelid is just a little bit lower. I'm going to select all these vertices right here and just lower them slightly like that. So we get a little bit more of an overlap. And this essentially allows it so that when we open the eye, we'd never get any point that weirdly intersects, or we don't get, when we close the eye right here, we don't get some sort of back opening like this if we push it too far. So it just gives us more control. So let's kind of bring it down there a little bit. Okay, so there's our eyelids. I'm actually gonna turn off the controls here so it doesn't get in our way. So great, we've got our eyelids. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select everything right here, and I'm going to freeze transformations. Make sure we don't have any modeling information here. So I'm just going to go to modify, freeze transformations. That makes sure that all of their rotations and whatnot are zeroed out. I can also go in here and go to edit, delete by type history. We don't really need it at this point. So with this, we've got the eyelid in place. Pretty good. Now, let's say I want to go a step further. I want to add a pupil in here. Well, to make a pupil, it's pretty easy. I'm just going to duplicate the eyeball here. And then I'm just going to delete all the faces except for the very front here. So something like that. Delete. There we go. Now, usually with a pupil, I also like to add an extra little bit of detail just to round this out slightly. So I'm going to take the multi-cut tool and just add a few cuts right here. Now, when you do this, make sure to round out that surface. Otherwise, it's going to be flat. So you see how that line is perfectly straight right here? I'm just going to round that out a little bit right there. Make sure that we don't get that perfectly flat line. There we go. So just a little bit of extra detail. We can bring this back right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the eye pupil here, take my faces, I'm just going to extrude them ever so slightly outwards like so. There we go. So this will give us that little bit of depth in there. I probably went a little too far with that, honestly. We don't need much. Although, to be fair, what I would also do is take this and then just sink it in a little bit. So I do want the pivot point to stay in the center here. So one thing you can do to make sure the pivot point stays in the center is move the eye back so it sinks in ever so slightly, the pupil. And then I'm just going to snap that vertice back to the front there, or to the center. Let's double check that. So it should be snapped right here. Now we've got that pupil, and there we go. Now it's kind of hard to see right now. Everything's just gray. So let's actually add some color in here. I'm going to add a Lambert material to the eye right here. Let's just make that white. Add a surface shader material to the pupil to make that black, because I don't want any reflection or any highlight on that. And then the eyelids, let's add a Lambert to those. Actually, for the eye, I might switch this to a Blinn, so it gets a little bit of shine on there. So if we look at this now, we get this. Very basic eye right there. Now that pupil is a little large, but that's fine. I can always set it to scale a little bit later. So right now I'm just kind of getting the shapes and the forms in there. Now if I want to go even further with this, what I can now do is I'm actually going to duplicate the eye geometry again. I'm going to scale that up so it kind of encompasses everything right here. And then I'm going to assign a new Blinn to this and set it to be transparent and just really make it nice and shiny. So that gives you that nice shine over top of the whole eye right there. And let's actually adjust that so it just gets a nice sharp shine. Something like that. There we go. So let's name all our objects because that would be good. So this is going to be the cornea, geo, the lens of the eye. We also had our pupil. And then our lids. Okay, cool. So all of this is the geometry for the eye. Great. I can just take this, I'm going to group them all together and just call this eye geo. Right there. How would you do the specular? Well, this would be the specular shine right here. If I was to do a proper render of this, I would be using an Arnold material. So for this, all I'm doing is using the specular roll off and eccentricity just to get the shine. I'm not really thinking too much more of that. So again, eccentricity is how tight the shine is going to be. Specular roll off is how soft it's going to be. And then you can use the specular color to make it a little brighter right in there. So there we go. Now, one thing I'm not a fan of is you'll notice how as it goes here, this is kind of going over what the demo should be, but it's something I always look for. If you look at that shine, notice how you can see the tiny little imperfections there. And that's because of this pole right here. As it's coming into the center, everything is like starting to twist as it's going into this tiny little point. This is why we try to avoid poles. So what I was talking about in the previous demo there. So how do we get this so that it doesn't happen? Well, you can either rotate this 90 degrees, so something like that. So now you can see no shine happening. I would actually rotate it the other way so that the top and bottom are in the eyeball like that. So you could do something like that, or you can change how the sphere is kind of calculated here. And let's kind of do that on a new sphere. So I'm going to go to Polygon Sphere. Let's just create this, scale it up. And in the sphere options, when you create them, you can change the, or sorry, not here. What I would do is instead of creating that sphere, that's what I'm thinking of. I would create a platonic solid. So platonic solid is an object that can be spheroid. If I take these, I can change the way it calculates the sides. So right here, you'll see everything is triangular, and I can just increase the subdivisions right here, and it creates this sphere with no points to it, or with very minimal points. So if I assign that blend material here, is it going to be more easy to select? No, let's just create a new one. So if we do the same thing, right here, you're going to notice far fewer issues with that lighting. Like right here, see how it shrinks down and then grows again? This is just going to make it a little bit cleaner. So I could do that if I wanted to. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal. I usually just rotate it. But for the sake of just using something that we don't usually use, we'll do this. Okay. So with that, we get a much cleaner shine right in there. Okay, cool. So with this, we need to start rigging it. Well, there's a few different things that we need to do in order to get this done. So first, we need the other eyeball. So I'm going to call this eye right geo. I'm just going to duplicate that whole group, move it over to the side. It's going to be our eye left geo. I should move it onto the other side, actually. So, like so. Now we got our two eyes right in here. Now I do want them centered in the world. Right now you'll see the center of the world right here is there. So I'm going to just take both groups here. And let's see, this is going to be at -20. So I'm going to set this to 10. And then set this to -10. Right here. Just to keep things nice and symmetrical. From there, let's get the controls that we're going to use. So I want to be able to actually animate these eyes, move them around. And there's going to be kind of two main controls that we're going to need. We're going to need eye controls and a root control. I'm going to create a circle here at the base. Make sure we can see that. There we go. Right there. Probably move the eyes up as well. Just have them sit on top of the grid right there. Actually, I'll keep them in the center for now. It'll make it easier to get the other controls working. I'll just lower this down for now. Okay, so from there, we've got this is going to be our root control. I'm going to duplicate that, and we're going to have our eye control, or eyes control. And then we're going to need a right eye and left eye. So we're going to have eye right control. Let's take that, scale it down. Wrong one. This one. Right eye. And then a left eye control. So these are basically everything that we're going to need right there. So for the eye controls, I'm just going to take all of these, rotate them up like so. And typically with the main eye control, I want this control to just be this kind of oval shape. If you've ever used any rig, you'll notice that this is kind of the standard. And then what I'll usually do is I'll select the control vertices and just scale the two ends in here to make it a little bit more square and we don't get that sharp point. From there, let's set these eye controls in line with the other eye. So I'm going to set the translate X to 10 and then just scale these down. Interesting. I'm getting a graphical glitch here. See how that one control disappeared? I need to reset my Maya preferences. For some reason, it's just doing that. Okay, and for some reason, my translate Y got pushed down. So there we go. Cool. So we've got our eye controls basically in place here. So with this, I can now just create a quick hierarchy on these rigs, or on these controls. So this is going to be the lead right there. So the main eyes control here is going to follow that. So I'm going to parent that there. So the root, then the eyes, and then these two individual eye controls are going to follow the main control. Just parent that, hit P. So with this, we can move our root control, make sure it's in object mode there. So there we go. We can move the eye controls, there we go. And then each of these individually can move around. Great. Now, if I wanted to go extra a little bit here, I can set my drawing overrides here just to start coloring these and making it a little bit more uniform. So usually the right controls typically are red. And then left controls are blue. Typically. So there we go. Aha! Starting to look like a rig now. Okay. So at this point, we need to be able to control things on the eye. The biggest thing is that we need to be able to move the eyes with our root control right here. So in order to do this, I'm going to select both eyes right here and I'm going to group them together. Just call this eyes group right there. So this group is going to move everything all together. And I can just take that and constrain it to my root control here. So take that and that, animation, constrain, parent. There we go. That all moves together. Perfect. Now, from there, I need these eyes to look at these controls right here. I need them to actually follow that. So the easiest way to do this is I'm going to take my geometry and I'm going to think, okay, which pieces of geometry do I need to have follow? Well, it's going to be the eye cornea, the pupil, and the eyeball. So all of these, I'm just going to group those together and then call this eye follow group. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So cornea, pupil, eye, group. We can call it eye follow. There we go. Now, with those in place, I can just take the eye follow groups and constrain these to the eye controls right here. But I'm going to be using an aim constraint. So let's take the left control here to the left eye right there, the group. Constrain aim right here and make sure maintain offset is turned on. So what that means is now as I move this, it follows along right there. Let's do the other side. So right control, right eye, constrain aim. Now if I move this, there we go. And suddenly it feels alive. Suddenly it's got so much more. You just doing that, huh? We can do that, or we can even just kind of bring it in a little bit, make it a little cuter. Or go all out and go bleh. There we go. So we've got that in place. Yay. So at this point, that's pretty much a simple rig. Now, there are some extra things we want to be able to do. For one, I want to be able to animate the eyelids. So for the eyelids, I have a few different ways I could approach this. I could just set up a very basic blink attribute on here. So we jump in here, there's be a blink and just closes both eyes. That works. I'm not a huge fan of that, especially for a simple rig like this, because we don't really have that much control. We're not going to have shaping ability here. So if I want to make this character blink, it'd be really cool if I could angle the eyes here so we can get something more like that to make the character a little bit sad, or the other way to make the character a little bit angrier. Wouldn't that be really cool? Well, let's just make sure we have that in there. So I'm actually going to do this by creating new controls. So you don't usually have this on most major rigs, not this type of control, but we're going to create some eyelid controls. So I'm going to create a polygon, or sorry, a NURBS circle once again. Take that, let's rotate it 90 degrees this way. And I just did something that I should have avoided, is I grouped all of these without freezing my transformations earlier. I told myself, don't forget it, don't get caught up on just talking about it. And I did. I totally forgot. So you'll notice here, if I try to freeze my transformations now, things can get a little wonky. So what I need to do is ungroup things, and then freeze the transformations and then group them again. And here I'll have to delete that constraint as well. So good lesson learned here. Don't forget to freeze your transformations before you start rigging things. You don't want anything to have weird values here. So for example, this eye there shouldn't be any scale values on there. Now the eyelids here, they have rotations. That's fine because I'm actually going to zero those out and keep those eyes. What's the word I'm looking for? The default position is going to be closed. So that's fine there, but make sure that you don't have any weird scale values or anything like that. So let's take this eye control here. Let's put that on this side here. And I'm going to shape this control by taking my control vertices and just snapping them in like so. So this is going to be my top eyelid control. So all I did was I selected my control vertices, move them up while holding down V so that they snapped to this other one right here. And what this will allow me to do is just kind of create this nice top control right there. So eyelid right control, or I should say top right control. Okay, take that, let's rotate it 180 degrees right there, and then it's going to be bottom. I can call it bot right. Okay, so with that, I'll just take both of these, modify freeze transformations. Haha, didn't forget this time. And that's great. I've got this control here that I can move up, and I'm going to be able to just have the eye essentially constrained to that. Nice. But there is something that I want to make sure. And that is, if I take both of these controls and duplicate them over like this, I don't want to have them move in the same direction. As I animate this, I want to be able to have both controls go in opposite directions. So if I open up the eyelid, it opens up like so. But then if I tilt it, it kind of goes into like a sad expression versus just going on one side. How do you do that? Well, the easiest way is to first group those controls. So I'm going to take those eyelid controls, group them right here. Let's call this eye control, eyelid control right. I'm going to duplicate that. This is going to be the left group. And then instead of moving them over, I'm going to scale them in -x. So -1 right here. and that flips them onto the other side right there. And since they're flipped, now if I open these up, you'll notice that they move together right here. But then if I tilt them, they move in opposite directions right there. So this is going to make it a lot easier to animate those eyelids. Okay. So eyelid controls, eyes group. My other eyelid controls are here. There's my root. Okay. I'm going to just take all my controls here, group them. Call this eyes controls. It's always good to keep things organized here. So we've got all of that. Let's constrain everything again. So I think the eyes are still following. Okay, good. So we want the root control to move everything in the eyes here. So that's the root control is going to move the eyes group right there. So constrain parent. Let's double check that that works. Good. Now the root control should also move all the eyelid controls and everything else. Did I? Okay, good. It's just looking back. Okay. So everything else will be parented there underneath the root controls. So now all of this is moving. With that, the actual eye controls here need to be parented under the main control. So now they follow along like so. Now the eyelid controls. I could just do a straight constraint. So take that eyelid control here to the eyelid, which let's zero these out here. I love this song. And we could do a constraint. So parent constraint right there. So now if I do that, this is going to allow me to animate that eye with just that eyelid control. But let's double check. Okay, cool. Everything else is still working. I can still animate this a little bit if I wanted to add a little extra motion in there. Okay, cool. So let's just zero these out and set all of our constraints. So control to geometry, constrain parent. If you hit G on your keyboard, it'll repeat the last command. So I can just select the control and then the geometry again, hit G. And now I can take the eyelids here, open them up. Eyelids there, open them up. And I can now tilt them if I wanted to. So now we can start to get a little bit more expressive on our eyes. Even with this simple rig here. Okay. So with that, everything's still working. Make sure that the root control still moves everything. Good. That's pretty much the iRig. That's as far as we really need to go. But for me personally, I like to be able to control the pupil size. I want to have those pupils actually be able to shrink and grow and move around. Now, there's a lot of different ways we can make the pupil. I actually put these as pieces of geometry, but we could do it just with a texture. We could actually model it into the eye and animate like clusters and everything like that. The reason I did it this way is if I use a texture, the texture sometimes can be a little bit wonky and not show like a high detail version. It can kind of be very fuzzy around the edges, which I'm not a fan of, especially if I'm doing a cartoony eye. I want that nice crispness in there. The reason I don't want to model it into the eye, which is what you get on most rigs. So for example, on this rig here, you'll notice that the eye is actually sculpted inwards right there. If we look at it from the side, it's flat, which can be really cool. And is that creates a very realistic eye. But when we look at it from the side, there's nothing. And for cartoony eyes, that can be kind of a pain. Whereas these eyes, if you look at it from the side, you actually still see the pupil. So it really just depends on what I need for the shot. In this case, just doing it like this is going to be super simple, quick, and clean. But the one thing here is, how do we shrink the size of them? Well, for something like this, we can use what's called set-driven keys, which is essentially a way to connect attributes together with animation. So to set this up, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to take my eye controls right here, and I'm going to add a, let's see, do I want to add it on? Yeah, let's add it on the individual controls here. So I'm going to select this control here. I'm going to go to modify. And I'm going to add an attribute right here. And I'm going to add pupil size. And I'm going to make sure it's a float. A float is essentially an attribute that has whatever value we want on there. And let's set the minimum value of 0, maximum value of, let's see, it really depends on how much control I want. The smaller the value, like 10, it's going to move in bigger steps. So I might just go, let's go 100. It gives us a good range of motion there. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to hit OK. And now we have the pupil size value, which just goes from 0. And if I move up, it goes all the way to 100. There we go. Let's do the same thing for the other one. So I'm going to go here, go to modify, add attribute, pupil size, float 0 to 100. Okay. There we go. Now I need to connect these to the irises right here. Now to make this a little easier, I'm actually going to hide the corneas for now, just so I can select that a little bit more easily. So to connect this, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to scale the pupil size. The problem right now is if I try to scale this, it's going to scale from the center right here into the eye. And not just that, even if I moved my pivot point so that it rests on top of the eye geometry itself. So move this right here, essentially. If I scale this now, you're going to notice that there's a gap here. And if I scale it indents itself, which is going to be a little bit of a pain. So what I can do is scale it up and then scale it in X a certain amount to wrap it around the eye still. So see that? How I'm pulling it back here. And then as I shrink it down, right here, we can flatten it out. And this is where set-driven keys are going to be super helpful for us. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this eye control. I'm going to go to my animation menu set under keys, set driven keys, and I'm going to hit set. I'm going to load this as my driver. So essentially what this means is that the pupil size is going to control what's going to happen next. When pupil size changes, these things will happen. So when pupil size is at 0, essentially I want the pupil itself, let's make sure that's off. The pupil itself, let's load that as the driven, the thing that's going to be affected. I want its scales to do something. So when the pupil size, I select this, pupil size is at 0. Okay, good. The pupil is going to have a scale. Let's kind of make this the smallest we want it to be. It's going to be something. Let's see, do I want to make it any smaller than that? And I think my pivot is a little off. Let's double check, make sure nothing's off there. Okay, cool. Yeah, something got rotated. You can see it here. This one's straight, this one's crooked. So let me actually realign this. I'm just gonna undo quick, see if, yeah, I must have accidentally nudged it as I was creating it. Looks like I might have nudged both of them. Okay. Well, actually, that's a good little thing here. How do we fix that? Well, the easiest thing to do, because they're not really connected to anything, I can just delete them and recreate them. Actually, did my eye control get moved? Yeah, that's what happened. So look at this. See how this isn't in the center anymore? This should be right here. There we go. Not sure how that got changed, but there we go. That saves a little bit of work. So once again, let's double check this. So pupil size, 0. Perfect. The pupil, I want it to be, how small? Let's go really small here. Something like that. Okay. So with that, I'm just going to hit key. So essentially what that does is when pupil size equals 0, the scales equal this value here. Now, if I take pupil size, go to 100, that's going to be at its biggest. So this is going to be maybe here. Let's scale it back right there, and I'll key it again. So now when pupil size equals 100, we get this. And now if I adjust that, we get that. Now you'll notice that it kind of breaks in the middle here. Well, I can just go through and go, let's say at 50, let's add another key. And at this point, it's going to be here. So I can just go through and start refining this. So let's say at, 20. It's going to be there. Key. And there we go. Now we get that nice pupil size, and it just works right there. Now I refine this a little bit more. Like you can see some of the edging and stuff. It's kind of a pain. I'm trying to do this super quick here. But that gets us pretty much where we need to be. I think what I would do is just take that pupil and nudge it ever so slightly forward globally. That way it just sits over top a little bit more. Now we won't have any issues. So there we go. Now I just do the same thing with the other eye. So I would just set that pupil size, set the driver and driven. Let's see, I'm trying to think if I could just copy the animation over. Let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to, once again, load the driver, load the driven, pupil size to the scale. I'm just going to hit key right away. And then set the pupil size here to 100. And then let's just scale that a little bit and key, just so we have that range of motion here. And then let's just take the keys from here and see if they'll work. Just gonna clean up my curves ever so slightly. And usually you want this to be pretty linear, but this will work fine for now. So I'm going to take my scale X, edit, copy, go to the other pupil, which is now hidden. Scale X, edit, paste, and I want to replace it. Make sure I go to frame 0. There we go. So now we go to the Y, copy that. Select the other pupil right here, Y, paste. And then Z. Copy, select the other pupil, edit, paste. There we go. Let's see if that actually worked. Okay. Definitely further forward, but yeah, something. Did I grab the wrong key on something? Could be. Looks like I got it right. Might just be something in the rig itself, but that's fine. For now, I'll leave it be because at this point it's just more of the same. So I don't want to go through too much of just the same thing over and over and over. So I would just key it together or just do a whole pass on it. Oh yeah, duh, it's the pivot point. You're right. I moved the pivot point on the other one. And I totally forgot to move the pivot point on this one. Thank you. There we go. So it's pivoting from way back here. It needs to pivot from there. The little things. It's always the little things. It needs to pivot from here. That would do it. Let's see. Okay, this one's actually pivoting from closer to the front. So, okay. I don't want to copy all of that again. I could. I'm going to take too long. Let's do that super quick. So, once again, I'm just going to key that right through there. And then we can just copy and paste. So scale X, scale X, edit, paste, scale Y, edit, paste, scale Z, edit, paste. And let's see how this works. Okay, cool. There we go. Now it's working. So now I can just take this, kind of get it to a size I want. Let's actually get them to be the same. That'll help. Now I can just take these and haha, we've got that pupil size working. Okay, so with this, we now have our eyes pretty much ready to go. There's just one other thing that we would need to do with this. So right now we can just kind of move this around. It's all good. The problem here is now we also need a way to individually move each eye on its own. So let's see, eyelids follow that. How would I want to do this? So for example, I want to be able to move the eye to the right here. How can I do that? Well, let's reset that eye back down to the center here. I'm just going to create a couple more circles. So because it's a cartoony eye, I'm going to have these just underneath here. Let's see. My curve snap doesn't want to work. Oh well. Let's just get these underneath here. The exact positioning doesn't really matter in terms of height, but I do want to make sure that they are underneath the eye. Right there. Just duplicate that like so. So this is going to be our eye mover, right? And then our eye mover, oh wait, wrong side, left. And then right. Okay, cool. So we've got these, they need to move with our root control, so I'll parent those under there. And now they need to move the entire eye. So this is where it kind of gets tricky, because we've got this control that's moving the aim of the eyes, these controls that are moving the eyelids. So if we just kind of take the geometry and constrain it to this, it's not going to quite work. So what we need here is another group to have follow. So if I take this entire group here, you'll notice that doesn't work. The eyelids stay behind because they're constrained to the eyelid controls there. So what I can do is take these eyelid controls, parent these to the movers. So left to left, right to right. So now, there we go. That moves the eyelids. And then just take these groups here and constrain those to the movers as well. So the right mover is going to move the right geo, constrain parent. Let's make sure that works. There we go. And it's still pointing back where it needs to be. And then left to left, mover to there. Constrain parent. Perfect. So now let's double check. Everything's working. I now can move my different eyes here. Eyelids still function. Pupils are adjustable. And then I can still animate the eyes. Perfect. Okay. We've rigged some eyes. Yay. It took a little bit, but you can see that they work. They're pretty functional overall. At this point, I just need to attach them to the frog here. So how am I going to do that? Well, first off, let's just get rid of the old eyes here. Don't need those. And then I'm going to take the mover here, and you'll notice that if I try to scale it, it kind of breaks everything. Everything just kind of shrinks down. What I need to do is take my eye, that is terribly spelt, eyes geometry and eyes controls. Group all of those together. We'll just call this eyes. And then from there, I can, let's center its pivot. There we go. Just scale that down globally. So I can now take this, match it to the size of the squirrel. So somewhere along there. Maybe a little smaller. That's quite big still. Okay, so somewhere around there. Now I'm going to take my root control. I'm going to match it to his head control here. I'm going to go to modify, match transformations right there. And it looks like it's spun it the opposite direction. That's not a problem. We can just go spin it right back. Move this back up here. Actually, let me undo that. Instead of matching my root control, I'm actually going to match the eyes group to it. That should give me more control. So modify, match transformation. There we go. What happened here? Did I have two things selected? Oh no, it did work. Okay, cool. So I can now just put this into place here. Spin this around. The joy of cutting through someone's face just to get an eye in position. Okay, so we've got these eyes in place right there. But we need to refine this a little bit. For one, as the head moves up and down, we need the entire head control here to follow with. So I'm just going to quickly constrain the head control, or sorry, the master eye control to the head control of the squirrel here. I'm just going to constrain that, boop, like so. Now as it goes up and down, we get this. From there, let's take the individual eye controls. So I can now just take these, position these exactly where I need them to be. So maybe a little bit more on the side there. A little bit more on the side here. And get that nice little offset there. And they don't have to be perfectly straight, and kind of makes it a little bit more fun if they're not. A little lower. So something like that. And I want these to follow the head as well. Because as the character squashes and stretches, you'll notice that it can sometimes pull a little too far. Now in this case, it actually works pretty well. I wouldn't have to do too much else to this. But if I did want to have that extra little bit of proper follow, what I can do is select a vertice from the squirrel's body right here, right where the eye should attach. Let's say right around here. Select this eye control. Eye control. That one. And then do a constraint. And I'm going to do a point on poly constraint. And I think I didn't have my offset changed. So point on poly. Make sure maintain offset is turned on. There we go. So what this is going to do is now make it so that as the head squashes and stretches, that eye follows the geometry properly. So the eyes don't just feel like they're floating with the character, but instead actually move with the body and the stretch of the body. So constrain, and then once again, point on poly right there. So the constraints are pretty much done there. And at that point, I can now just animate this. So Do that. Maybe open those eyelids a little bit more, make him feel a little bit more bored. Be slightly angry. Maybe a little bit of, yeah. Make him suspicious. So there we go. Now we have those eyes, and they should follow the whole shot. There we go. So hopefully that made sense. Definitely rigging on the fly is, as you can see, it's not a linear process. There's always things that happen, things that you have to kind of go back for. But in the end, is really just kind of thinking of the hierarchy of things. And honestly, the hardest thing is the pupil size, which you don't have to do it this way. This is one way of making the pupils shrink and grow. There's a whole different slew of different things you could do. But this will give us that nice eye shape that we can then use to just move around, and we can just do all sorts of fun little animations with that. And we don't have to just have that blank look, or especially if you're dealing with a rig that has no eyes or that has very basic eyes, this can be a fun way of making the characters a little bit more expressive in a very simple way.